and we are back here live on YouTube because this puppet, the Cameron puppet, which we have covered in 2 other lives, now we're going to add all the finishing touches. So if you watched the one before this, it was 5 hours and a bit of a race to the finish. However, some of the finishing details are the most important. So we thought that it deserved its own video. So we're going to show you finishing details. We're going to show you how to make features like noses, how to attach things like eyes and ears, little details like brows or glasses, and then we'll do some final finishing, including his costume, install the arm rods, and then maybe even pick some seams, trim up some fingers, and all of that. But for starters, I'm going to turn it over to Patrick Johnson, and he's going to work on the nose. I will say right off the bat, at the last live, people liked what we were doing, and they generously gave us tips, which is really cool. And it made us feel good. We obviously don't do this for the tips, but if you appreciate the information that we're giving and you want to somehow contribute, we won't turn your money away. All right, let's bring in Patrick, and he's going to start talking about puppet features.
All right, so if you caught the last live, you know that at the very end, I did manage to pull a nose over the finish line, but you know what? After thinking about it over the weekend, I realized it wasn't quite the way I want it to be. Not exactly the way I would want it. It's a little rushed. So I'm going to set this guy aside here. I'm going to show you, we had put some wig tape on, which is a great way to attach a nose, but ultimately I want enough material, enough slop in this material so that if I wanted to, I could stitch it in place. And right now, the only option I have, because the material is pulled so tight, is to tape it. So I'm going to pull this wig tape off. And these are the seams that I did on Friday. And this is the original fleece I pulled off. You can see how large this fleece is. I did make a pattern like this here, which you can learn how to do in the last video. And part of this pattern that I made does accommodate for the shape of the underneath the nose. What I realized is I didn't give myself enough allowance around so the material can wrap around the side of the nose. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to trace up a brand new pattern using this pattern as a starting point, and I'm going to use this scrap of orange fleece that we have left over and stitch up a whole new nose here. So this one I can do on some of the tag board here. I'll just cut a piece off. Bottom, this will be fine. Oh, and some tag board materialized out of thin air, even better. So I'm going to cut off a piece here to use. We use these manila folders, which are great. Or you can use tag board, which is what this stuff is basically made out of. So my original pattern was here, and I'm just going to trace it up. I'm going to make sure I do keep this hard shape here, because that's something I do need. I do need this line here, and I need this line here. And I'm going to draw where my original pattern was, just so I have a best sense of what I'm starting with, which is about around here, here. And then I'm going to trace further outside the lines. So, original pattern, this will be discarded. I do want to mention that this is the fleece that stretches this way. That's how it stretches. I'll say nose fleece. And what I want to do is add a little more allowance around the outside. So when I wrap it around, I actually have a little more material to work with. So I'm just going to draw it out here a little. I'm just doing a little bit of estimation, a little bit of a guess. And hopefully this will give me the material that I need. I'm adding, looks like about 1/4 of an inch around the entire shape. So I'll do that. And if I end up with too much, I can always cut some off if I need to. But let's just see if this does the trick. Cut out this material here. There we go. And go across that, we'll see if that works. Now when you're doing a nose that's a circle shape, it's a little simpler, or a sort of a half sphere. Because for that one, you literally can make a piece of fleece that is basically a circle that's just a little wider than the diameter of the sphere or the half sphere that you're covering. But this one was a little trickier just because it has that kind of a triangular shape. So this is the pattern that I'm going to try now. I'm going to trace this onto the orange fleece and hope it works because we only have some scraps we're working with here. I'm going to find where the stretch goes. The stretch goes this way, as opposed to this direction is less stretchy. Let's see, boom, boom. But this is a little more stretchy this way. And so that's how I want it to lay. I want the stretch to go like this. I'm going to use as much of the end of this as I can so I can preserve a large piece if I need it for something later. And then I've got a pen that matches the color of the fleece. I'm going to trace it out. And we'll be pulling this together with upholstery thread. Upholstery thread is just like regular thread, a little thicker, a little more robust though, and you can really, really jam on it without it breaking. Regular thread has a tendency to break if you pull it as hard as we need to wrap around this form. So I'm going to put this with our patterns, and the old fleece pattern I'm going to get rid of because we're not going to need it and we don't want to get confused later. Cutting fleece out with scissors. That's one of the pieces of equipment or tools that every puppet builder should have. You want to have a good pair of scissors. You want to keep your scissors nice and clean as well. Sometimes we actually have a pair of scissors we use when we cut out glued items and stuff, kind of a junk pair of scissors. But this is more of a fine thing that I'm working with, so I want to make sure I have a nice clean cut here. You want to keep your tools looking nice and keep them nice as nice as you can. A big pair of scissors are good, and also another basic puppet building tool. Get a small pair of scissors. If you have one of each of those, then you can do pretty much what you need as far as cutting materials like fleeces and fabrics and such. All right, so I'm gonna trim off that bit of scrap. We're not going to use this. Maybe I'll put it aside for now. Okay, so this is the new shape. Kind of looks like a Star Trek logo, but the bottom is going to get sewn together first, and that'll give me the shape that goes around the corner. So I'm going to start with that. I'll be using some orange thread here. You always want to try to find thread that matches as closely to the material that you're sewing. That way, if for some reason the thread shows, it's more likely that it'll pretty much disappear. So I'm going to thread up my needle here. That's a pretty hardy needle. That's a bent needle. That's a leather needle. There we go. All right. Find my needle and thread it up here. And I'm going to start by stitching that bottom part. That's the first thing we're going to do. When you thread your needle up, you want to tie it off. I probably have a little more thread than I need, but that's all right. Better to have a little more than to run out as you're stitching. Tie the knot off. I like to trim off all the extra past the knot just to get rid of it. And then we're just going to do a basic whip stitch across the bottom here of this shape. So we'll line up those two edges. And we're just going to whip that along. Grab material, and then the first stitch you do, you go through the loop that you've made, and that's so you can tie it off. And that way you don't lose the thread as you go through. We always basically do a double loop with we double up the thread. Some people stitch with single, which is great if you're stitching maybe fine materials like silks and things like that. I heard maybe it might be good to do a single thread, but for the kind of work that we're doing, the kind of materials we're using, we always double it up. We're stitching fleece, we're stitching fur, I got a knot in my throat already. This is the worst. It's a pretty big one. Let's see if I can get it out without fussing too much over it. Or maybe I might just have to start over.
New thread.
New thread, Sean says. New thread. Last time I sewed the entire thing with a knot in it, and it was not great. All right. Bummer. All right. Well, that was not very long. So get rid of that knot. There. All right. I'm just going to keep what I've already sewn, because why not? I'm going to tie up this here and start over. Oops. This thread is conspiring against me. There we go. All right. All right, so I already have a couple of stitches in here. That's fine, whatever, I'm just gonna leave that. I'll cut off that tail. I'm gonna make a new loop here, like that. Tie the knot, and then continue stitching along. Bottom there. Grabbing that. And then let me get rid of this old thread here, which we're not gonna need. Just get in our way. And then I'm just going to continue stitching the bottom part as I go here. Made another little knot just in case. Go along the bottom. And this is what's going to give us the little triangular shape to the nose. Just a basic whip stitch. You kind of go in one side of the material, in one side of the other, and pull it tight. And we'll see how this lines up. You'll see there's a little extra hanging over. It's okay. That was because I do have some extra kind of bagginess in this material. And hopefully when I pull it around the form, that can be sort of worked around. Or if I need to, I can trim it off. You know, if I were making another version of this puppet, maybe I would refine this pattern even further. But let's see if I can get this to do what it needs to do. All right, so now we've got that stitched up, and we're going to pull it over our foam form. The nose is made at L200, backed with a little piece of wood. I'm going to cut the threads off that I had stitched on Friday. Those were too tight and not great. So off it goes. Pull all this material off. Like that. And this goes away. And this is the nose we're going to be covering. And we're going to take our little material we just sewed, turn it inside out, and then we're going to find where this line goes. We're actually going to go on the bottom. This goes along the bottom edge of our nose, and this part here is the corner. So put that in place, like so. Okay, great. Right, so it goes like that. That's the top there. All right, so now got that kind of working there. So now you can see I have a lot of extra sort of material over the edge of this nose, which is a little more to my liking. Now what I'm going to do is I am going to trim off some of this here, just to sort of unify it a little bit. And then next thing I'm going to do, see how there's a little more leeway on the back there. And these materials will be drawn in together, like a little bit like a bag. I feel like I want to take some off the top, but maybe I'll see how I pull it together first. And the way I'm going to pull it together is by using upholstery thread. So upholstery thread, this is Coates & Clark upholstery thread. And it just has more strength, a little more thickness to it. I'm using yellow. It doesn't really matter what color I use at this point because it's not going to be seen. It's on the back of the puppet's nose. Pull out a fairly good length. Once again, we're going to double loop it through the thread or through the needle. Tie it off. And we're going to be stitching this thing from the back. And think of it like you're making a miniature drawstring bag. This is a great technique to use for all sorts of shapes of noses. And by putting the wood on the back of the nose, it helps, as you pull it, it helps it kind of keep its shape. If it were just straight up foam, we could do it. It would require a different type of pattern and probably a different type of technique, because the more you pull and pull and pull, you'll continue to distort and squeeze that nose smaller and smaller and smaller, and you'll lose some of the definition. So already when you cover foam with materials like fleece, there's a softening of the edges to begin with. So I'm just going to make it like a little bag here. I'm just going to put the needle through, tie off a knot to begin with. That way I can really pull on it. And I hope I don't get a knot this time like I did last time. And I'm just going to go in and out through the material, just like that. And there's a good amount of distance between each stitch, maybe close to 1/8 of an inch or so. And I'm not going right to the very end of the material. I'm coming in just a little bit. That way I have some, I have some material to work with when I pull it. It's not just going to pop right through out the edge. So I'm just coming all the way through. You'll see it starts to kind of draw up like a drawstring bag. Going around the perimeter here, all around the edge, and in the material, out through the material. And because it doesn't matter, this is on the back side, so you're not going to see the thread as it comes through. Normally you want to avoid having your thread go to the front of the fabric, or the fleece, or the fur, but because that is all going to be hidden behind the nose shape, that doesn't matter. And you want to pull it tight when I do pull it tight, because you want this thing to be as low profile as possible. So that way when it sits on the face, it doesn't sit away from the face. You want it to kind of marry to the puppet itself, to feel like it's not just, a tacked on appendage, but actually is a part of the character. So I'm going through and through all the way to the end. When I get to where I started at the very top here, I'm going to pull it tight, and you'll see how it kind of seals up on the back. And then I'll do some cross stitches across the whole back to kind of draw different ends together to continue to pull that fleece together, but hopefully not as intensely tight as it was that first go around. So even now we're rebuilding a puppet and continuing to learn from our mistakes that we made even just a couple days ago. So when you're building puppets on your own, give yourself some grace, give yourself a little leeway, and understand that it's okay to make a mistake. It's not done until you say it is, and allow yourself to learn and grow as well. So so now you see on the back how it kind of is starting to pull together here, like so. So now when I cinch it up, it seals up nicely around the back. There you go. That's a little more like what I'm going for, like that. And that's a nice seal there. It's a little bit of open. That's okay. It doesn't need to close it the entire way. But also I have a little bit of material flexibility. That way, if I need to sew it to the face, I can actually work with that. Now to tie it off, I'm just going to go to the bottom here, go up to the top, and just continue like making little X's across the back of this nose here. And what this is really doing is just sort of tightening the material and pulling it into place. So you could just seal off the bag if you wanted to by doing a little whip, but I like to pull it across a couple times just to give it a little security and kind of unify it a little bit.
We have one comment, by the way, throughout this process. If people have questions, go ahead and put them in the chat, and we will get to them as we are able. But we have a nice little wave and a hello from Madi Puppets.
Oh, hi, Madi Puppets. Thanks for watching. And thanks for joining us for our live puppet building tutorial. So I'm now grabbing the material here, and you can see this is sort of, as I pull it, this is sealing up the back of the nose. And really what that's going to do is give it a nice seal, keep the fabric in place so it doesn't unravel, but also gives it a nice uniform back. So if I want to put some wig tape on the back or whatever we're using, there's a surface that is, that is uniform. All right, so that's pretty good like that. And I'm just going to tie off some of these stitches here. By tying it off, I'm just going to make a little loop. And I'm going to put the needle through the loop and pull it tight like that. And just because I want to and it's free, I'm going to do it one more time. So that way, in case if the first one comes undone, I've got a second loop. And then I'm going to go through the material one last time, pull it tight, and then cut it off. And so now we have a nice nose shape here. That's the front, and that's the back, sealed up like so. This gives us a little options about how to attach the nose. Wig tape would be a great way to go to tape it in place, but if we knew this was a set look for the character, then we may actually want to stitch the nose in place around. So what I'm actually going to do is do a little bit of both. I'm going to use some of this top stick here, which is, it's the original top stick. 1 inch by 3 inch strips. And the illustration on the back is not to scale. And this is for, in the real world, it's used for, it's called toupee tape, for sticking toupees and wigs, and it's kind of like Hollywood fashion tape is a similar sort of thing. Very sticky, very low profile, but it's great for puppets because it sticks to the things we need to be able to stick to. I'm just going to cut a little of the excess off here and just give a little bit of shape to this so it can go on the back, like that. And then you just peel and stick. So I'm going to peel off this part here and just stick it one end to the back of the nose like that. And then I just peel off this backing, and that exposes it. And you can see how low profile this thing is. It's very, very thin, and it's clear. And then I'm just going to place it on the puppet's face. Try to find that center as best I can. In fact, I'm going to pull these eyes out because that's going to throw me off a little bit if these eyes aren't necessarily where they need to be. So make sure this is lined up center. I'm going to put it on the stand here. This will help. Also, if you are looking at a puppet and you aren't quite sure whether it's centered, like your eye wants to make things work, wants to make things symmetrical, but a camera doesn't lie, you can always use your iPhone and just put your camera on it and kind of look at it in a new way. Also, if you want to know if your puppet is looking symmetrical the way you want it to, bring it to a mirror. Look in the mirror, and then the mirror will help you see it automatically from a whole new perspective, and you'll be able to see right away what is symmetrical and what isn't. It's very easy for your eye to even have ears that are just completely off, and you don't even notice it through the entire build until you get it in front of a mirror, and that's when you start to really notice it. So that's feeling pretty good to me. Like that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to stitch this nose in place. And we're going to, once again, use a whip stitch. Actually, we're not going to use a whip stitch. We're going to use a ladder stitch. And I'll be stitching where I'm going to grab some of the material of the nose and some of the material of the fur, and I'm just going to stitch all the way around. And I'll probably start at the top. That gives me a nice sort of anchor to begin with. So let me do that right now. And also, while we're doing that, just because it's easier to have access this way, if you saw in the last video, you understand that this puppet head and body was made so they could be removed. And I'm actually going to remove it right now because I want to be able to have access to the head and not have to worry about the arms flopping around and stuff. So I'm just going to undo the safety pin. Boom. Pull that out. That's how this head has been kept in place. And you can see this is one of the reasons why you want to be able to have a head that's removable, is if you need to make adjustments, modifications, or changes, it's very easy to do just by pulling that head off. So now I have full access, unencumbered access, and I'm going to put that nose in place. One thing that we'll do eventually today is something that you're not going to see, which is the puppet brain. If you saw our video on the mouth palette, you know that we didn't put any loops and stuff in there, because what's going to really keep the puppeteer's hand in place is the brain, and that'll be a soft foam carve, so something you can look forward to. We'll be coming to that later on today. All right, so I'll be using yellow thread. I feel like that's a pretty good one. You could go with orange, but I'll go with the yellow. Pull out your thread. Same thing. We're just going to snip it, knot it, stitch it, loop it, and then we're going to be doing what's called the ladder stitch. And so throw this needle up here. Ladder stitch, the principle of that is you're grabbing the surface material of two pieces of fur or fleece, and then as you pull them together, the stitch basically hides the seam, makes it an invisible stitch. So it's a great way to stitch from the top of something. Normally you want to be stitching from the back of a material, but obviously at this point I can't really get to the back of where this nose is, and so it really is a preferred stitch for these sorts of things. So start by pulling the first knot into the face, like this. This material is nice, has a lot of, feels like there's a fair amount of stretch to it. Maybe it's just so worn out. It has a little wear, which is helping us. Like that, and then I'm gonna go into the nose, same way, like that. Boom. I'm already starting to kind of pull these pieces together. Next stitch is going to go into the fur and out like that. And then I go into the fleece, right along the edge. Go actually a little closer to the edge. That and out like so. And I just continue around the entire time, stitching the ladder stitch as I go, because you're kind of like climbing down like a ladder. I guess is one way to think about it. If you want to see more stitches and stuff, obviously subscribe to our channel. You'll see more behind the scenes puppet building techniques. We've done tutorials. We do demonstrations about some of the puppets we have to rent, which you can learn about puppet building through that. But also follow us on our other social media accounts. We are on Instagram as well. You can follow us on Facebook. And there we try to do is, share the information that we've learned over the years, either from other puppet builders or information that we've techniques that we've developed on our own. So if you want to learn about puppet building, there's some great resources for you on our social media platforms.
And while you are sewing, we do have a question.
Great.
How many hours do you estimate have gone into this puppet so far to get it to this point?
How many hours have gone into this puppet so far to get it to this point? Great question, because we did rebuild the puppet. So I would say when we're building a puppet from scratch, starting with a design and creating a mock-up and then pulling patterns, I would say the mock-up phase can take anywhere between 1 to 2 weeks, sometimes longer, depending on how complicated the puppet is, and depending upon if we're working with a client. So as far as hours go, if you're thinking, 40 hours a week or so, so maybe it's 80 hours for mock-up. And then say your building process, we had to source materials, so there's a fair amount of shopping and sourcing that goes into it. There's also creating design things and things like that. And then as far as foam construction and patterning, maybe that's another, and covering, maybe it's another 2-3 weeks. So it could be, 80 times 2, which of course everybody knows is
160.
160, exactly. And then, so maybe then another 80 or 40 on that, 60.
All right, stop doing live math.
70, 80, 90. Maybe you're looking at 200, 250 hours or so. If you were to say how much time it is, would be sort of a fair estimate, I guess. But generally, it takes weeks of work.
Yeah, it takes weeks, and a lot of that is actually working out the patterns.
Yeah.
So something to consider. A puppet like this, where we pretty much already had it made, we just had a much older version of it, and we used that as a mock-up. So a lot of your time is spent getting the mock-up done. And also a lot of time is spent with client approval and feedback. And you do have to build that into your schedule. Sometimes there's not time to build it into the schedule, but...
Yeah. But I would say, every puppet is different. And every project is different. And, so we try to budget our projects so that, we're being compensated for the time that we think we'll be able to spend on it. And we're pretty good about estimating how long a puppet will take to build, these days. When we first started, it was hard to kind of know, but now we have a pretty good sense of it just from our own experience.
Also, we've been able to put a few time-saving systems into place. Yeah. So, for example, our rod pockets are already pre-made, our neck sleeves are pre-made, our arm rods are pre-made. We can print out arm gaskets really quickly.
And also, some of the patterns that we have already exist in the computer. For example, the Avenue Q hands, which are the same ones we use for this puppet. They exist, and we use a laser cutter to cut them out, but we did a recent project for a client, and they wanted 5 fingers on the puppet's hand instead of 4. Great. Nice thing is, because the pattern was pre-built in the computer, it was a matter of modifying that pattern so we could get it to the point where we had a 5-finger hand as opposed to a 4-fingered hand. So even that kind of work, even if it's not exactly the exact same, it still helps us because we're starting from a point of having some assets already, ready to go.
We have another question as you're stitching.
Mhm.
Love your videos.
Thank you.
Really enjoy them and have learned so much. Question: do you have a simple puppet pattern for sale?
It's a great question. We actually don't have a simple puppet pattern for sale. It is a question we get a lot. And there's two reasons why I think that I can think of. One, we just haven't done it, is number one. And number two, I feel like it's more valuable to understand the process of puppet building from start to finish so that you can then create a puppet that is uniquely yours. I broke a needle.
Uh-oh.
I broke the needle. Last time I don't think I've ever broken a needle before.
Live on
This
YouTube.
This is drama, folks. This is real drama.
Let's see how he deals with a broken
All
needle.
right. Well, I know.
Can't glue it back together.
No. So what I'm going to do is, this is what I do when I have a problem like this, and I'm so close to the end I don't want to restitch. I'm going to cut this needle off there, get rid of all the needles and parts, and I'm going to thread a new needle on. Maybe one that's not quite as thin. No. All right. And this is what I do. I don't want to undo all the stitching I've done. So I'm going to thread this needle up through the hole of the, then put the thread through the hole of the needle, both sides through. It's a good test of dexterity.
The tension's palpable.
Yes, it always is when I'm working on the nose for some reason. All right, all the way through. This time I'm not going to tie a knot. I just have it like this, right? And then I'm going to continue stitching through as I was. Probably not going to break a second needle. And I'm going to pull it, but I'm not going to pull it all the way through. I'm going to leave some of this out, like this, and then I'm going to do another stitch through. And by doing that, eventually it will sort of tighten up to the point where I won't be able to pull that end, that frayed edge through. So then I do it like this. You'll see that this part that was left out is still there. And then I continue through. I don't know if this is the right way to do it, but this is something I've found works when I break something, a needle or whatever, halfway through a stitch.
Disaster averted.
Yeah.
I'd like to add on to one of the reasons why we don't sell patterns is writing up the instructions for how people can use them is would be so time consuming for us. So we kind of go by the old principle, if you give a man a fish, he'll eat for a day. If you teach a man a fish, he'll eat for the rest of his life. So we're teaching you how to fish.
Yeah. If we just
And Marty says, well handled.
Oh, thank you, Marty. Yeah, if we just give you the roadmap, then anybody can get there, but we want you to know the way. We want you to be able to read the compass and understand how you actually got there, as opposed to just getting there, not understanding the process. And that way, when you have a pattern you created on your own, then good news. You can modify it to create all sorts of different types of puppets. And there are some resources out there that exist where people do sell patterns, but it's just something that we have not done and don't feel inclined to.
I have a question. For people who are interested in buying patterns, what would you pay for them?
All right, there you go.
What would you pay for a simple puppet pattern?
That's true. Money talks.
No, I'm just curious.
There might be a market there.
There might be a market, but is it worth the amount of effort that it would take for us to create them?
Right, because creating the pattern is the hard part. And also, it's kind of nice that, once the pattern exists out in the world, then you end up with a lot of puppets out on the internet or whatever that have a similar look and vibe. All right.
So we're forcing creativity.
Forcing creativity. So there's the nose there, all stitched in place with the ladder stitch. And you can see how that seam disappears, even with all the trials and tribulations that it took to get there. It is looking very nice. All right, so the next step is ears. Nobody likes doing ears, but maybe Sean wants to do the ears. He does not want to do the ears.
All right, I'll do the ears.
Easy to get them off. I'm pulling out some of these little errant threads that were just sort of...
So Marty is saying maybe somewhere between $17 and $25
All right.
for a puppet. I guess we'd have to have a lot of customers for that to be
Well, I guess
worthwhile.
how about this? If all of our, 33 whatever thousand Instagram followers and our 10,000 YouTube followers bought a pattern, then I feel like that would be a worthwhile venture.
That's right. And we have another frequent watcher coming back saying hi.
Hello.
All right, so you say ears. You gonna make me do the ears?
Yeah, ears happen next, unless you want to do them, or the brain happens next. I'm just pulling out some of these threads that were in the head here from the last time we stitched this thing in place. Every time you look at the puppet, you kind of start to see new little things that need to be cleaned up. All right, so now I'm stitching here. So Sean is going to talk about the puppet ears. Thankfully, we're not remaking the ears. That's the worst.
All right, Patrick has very cleverly pawned off a really unfortunate and detestable step, which is the puppet ears, and he did that on purpose. So that's what's happening. But we're live on YouTube. So what am I going to do? Say no? All right, haha. The reason why I think ears are so challenging, first of all, these ears are kind of perfunctory. Like, they don't say anything about his character. It's not like it's an elephant or something. So it's just kind of like, I mean, you don't have to put the ears on, but he's wearing glasses, so I think it makes sense to have ears. They're kind of perfunctory. But what makes them so challenging is there's so many ways for them to go wrong. So they could be too far forward, too far up and down. Like with the nose, you have like a center seam that you can use for the centering, and at some point it's going to go around this face, and there's only one nose. The thing with the ears is you could have one perfect and then one here, and it's wrong, and then this one's here, and this one's here, and this one's here, and this one's here. Anyway, so but we're gonna get through this together. Patrick has a grin on his face because he knows he's put me up to this. All right, this is drama, everybody, drama. By the way, if you like what we're doing and you like these videos, you can show your appreciation by leaving a tip, which apparently you can do. So if you want to encourage me to get those ears done, that's worth $5. Okay.
Or $1 million.
Or $1 million. Yeah, we were trying to get $1 million on Friday. We fell about $999,000, give or take, short. So, we're getting there. We're getting there. You can help us become millionaires today. All right, enough about that. Let's get some ears on here. So I'm just gonna, because this character wears glasses, I'm gonna go ahead and use the glasses as some sort of a gauge. And you just gotta start with one ear. You start with one ear. That's how you're gonna start this. And you're gonna pin this ear in place. As Patrick was doing the nose, I was thinking, okay, I'll do the eyes next, and he'll do the ears. I was already going to sort of pawn that off on him, but it didn't quite work out that way. That's the thing with being a twin, is you, a lot of times your similar thinking could be your undoing, as they might say. All right, so here's one ear, just pinned. Now, one thing you can do is find a center seam to say, well, we know it's at least this far from, so at least you're starting with a point. But what I'm going to go ahead and do is stitch this one on first, so at least we have one ear locked in place, and then we'll stitch the other one.
Motti Puppets, thank you. $4.99. A road to $1 million. Here we go.
That's right.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
$999,000.
Now we get to watch Sean do math live on
more.
YouTube.
I just said it. $999,995 more.
Awesome. Thank you.
So thank you very much. That's generous. I'm going to go ahead and use this yellow thread. No need to use upholstery thread or anything for the ears, because they don't take that much stress.
And we also have our friend from Egypt has
Yay.
joined again.
Awesome.
Saying that she sent us a message on Instagram we didn't respond to. Well, we'll make sure we get to that.
Yeah.
But if you have a question here, go ahead and type it up. And also, another person has just said hello. So hello to people who are watching and tuning in. Thank you so much.
Yeah, we haven't, just over the weekend, we haven't been commenting on the Instagram, but we do try to stay on top of all those comments.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so as before, we're doubling the thread so it's nice and sturdy, tying that knot threading it through the needle. And I'm going to use the same ladder stitch that Patrick used to attach the nose. So I'm a lefty, so you'll see me go in the opposite direction. But basically, in and out the fur, in and out the nose, in and out the fur, in and out the nose, and continue
That's
around.
an ear, not a nose.
Yeah.
That's how much he doesn't want to do the ears.
Ah.
He calls them noses.
I call the nose so that it's the nose on the side of your face that you hear with instead of smell with. Also known as an ear. Some people call it ears. I call it a nose. Some people call it ears. All right, so I'm going to take that first pin out. And I'll go in and out of the face, and then I'll just go in and out. Now this little ear is just a little bit of foam. No need to change the foam from the existing ear. But if we had made it from scratch, it would just be similar to this. Foam inside, snipped or maybe pinched to make the shape. Sometimes you can use fun foam, which is basically 1/8 inch L200. Very, very thin L200. But it all depends on the look of the ear. Someday it'd be fun to make a puppet where the ears are like a part of the character.
Well, generally, when we make animal puppets, the ears become a little more of a showcase.
Yeah, if they're cat ears or something like that. But maybe it'd be fun to make a character with really big ears.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just working my way around doing that ladder stitch.
Monty Puppets has a question as you are sewing, which
Yes.
is how often do you have to refurb your puppets?
Okay, great question. It depends on the use that the puppets get. So, if it is used frequently, then first of all, it's best to do regular maintenance. A puppet's used frequently will need to be rebuilt more frequently. However, the materials matter. So if it's just like fleece and fur and doesn't have a lot of foam or anything, then it can, by foam, I mean like exposed foam. Like it's not like a flocked head or something like that. Then it will last longer. This particular puppet, we could have continued using it from 12 years ago. It was fine to use, except that what we were wanting to do is use these videos as a way to show you some of our old puppet building mistakes and then fix them so that you folks out there could avoid making those mistakes. So this puppet didn't necessarily need to be refurbed, but it's already thrown away. But the foam we pulled out of it was pretty old, pretty aged.
We have puppets that we've used for our puppet shows that we don't perform anymore, but they got a lot of wear over multiple summers for many years, and the ones that are made out of the fur and the fleece and the foam are still holding up very well. They get a little dingy, so they need to be cleaned. Probably the puppets we end up refurbing the most are our Avenue Q puppets.
Yes.
They've been in one production so far, and they're going to another one. Our brand new set has. And even in the course of that run, we had to make some modifications and adjustments to those puppets. So because they get used so much.
Yeah, it's a show where there's nothing like it in puppetry as far as the use that say a character like Princeton gets on stage. I mean, it gets a lot of use. So I'm tying the knot.
Puppetry 210 says, "Hello, Swazzle, Patrick and Sean.
Hello.
The twins, you are amazing."
Yes. Oh, thank you. And yes, we are twins.
Yeah.
We are twins. All right, so one ear is stitched. That's not the hard part. The hard part is getting the second ear. And the worst thing about it is when you get the second ear and you're looking at it here and you think, oh, it looks great. And then you go to take the final picture of it, only to discover that it's higher, it's further forward, it's whatever. So what I'm going to do to try to avoid making those mistakes is I'll get his glasses on, resting on the nose and resting on the ear. And I'll at least have an idea that the next ear is going to go here. So I'm going to pin that in place just for starters. Now, if your puppet doesn't have glasses or anything, you can eyeball it or use some of the techniques. So I'm looking here, and it looks a little low already, but I don't know. Maybe it's just my eye.
Yeah, it's low.
It is low. Okay.
And maybe upside down.
Oh. Upside down and low. Okay. These ears, thank you, Patrick.
You're welcome.
That needs to be helpful. These ears do not have a definable top and bottom. Worst. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure from the back seam to the puppet ear that I've already put in place. I'm going to see that is 4 inches. And for our international followers, that is an incalculable number of metric units. And then from here, I can see, okay, so it's a little too far back by about ½ an inch, or again, half of an incalculable metric unit. All right, so move forward a little bit. Move forward a little bit. Okay. So let me just measure in that center seam. This is when I discovered the center seam is off, and that would be crazy. 4 inches. Great. So it should be off. It should be good that way. And then I can also measure from the top of the head. You just find fixed points. And go, okay, 6 inches or 3,000 meters, whatever it is. And also 6 inches. Okay, so theoretically that should be centered. All right, you guys are looking at it through a camera on the internet. So comment, is it centered? And then I'll blame you all if it's not centered. So take a look. What do we think? Is it good? Does he need up, down?
I think the nose is a little crooked.
Oh, great. Patty says the nose is crooked.
There we go.
Okay. Ears, looking good. Ready to stitch?
Stitch them in place.
All right. I'll stitch it in place.
Here's someone who says that you could be puppet designers on Broadway.
Well, thank you.
Question we have for that is,
what's that?
Broadway of what city?
Broadway of what city? Classic joke.
If you know the reference, type it in the chat.
All right, so our puppets have graced the Broadway stage. A show that we did in 2010, 2011 called The Pee Wee Herman Show. And it was directed by Broadway director Alex Timbers. And it started its run here in Los Angeles. We made 20 puppets for the production, along with other puppet companies. And all of those puppets were shipped to New York for the limited run on Broadway. So that is one way that our puppets actually have been on Broadway.
Monty has some advice for the ear.
Yes.
Just make sure they don't sit crooked.
Exactly. Don't make it crooked. That's good advice. So someday I'm just gonna make a character where like that's the thing. Yeah, he's got crooked ears. That's what's so good about him or her. All right, using that same knot. Well, the funny thing with puppets is when you're making a puppet, a lot of times it's not one big thing that you're doing. It's lots of little things along the way. And all those minor adjustments. That's why it's really challenging to rebuild a puppet and make it look exactly the same. I mean, even the top puppets out there, some of the most famous puppets, when you see the rebuilt, they always look different. Always look different. Sometimes it's a choice that they've made, like, well, we need to be bigger or whatever, or we need to use a more robust material. But even if you're trying to make it exactly the same, it's always going to be different. It just is. Just because there's a million little choices. Like there's a disgraced author would say, a million little pieces. There you go. So now I'm stitching. And all those little things have to come together. Even with the patterns, even with the material. It's very challenging.
Here's a great question, again, from Monty. And it does, we can answer it with a project that we've done recently.
Okay.
At least in broad strokes, we can describe it. She says, any advice on how to recreate a puppet that was made without a pattern?
Okay. Recreating a puppet that was made without a pattern. What were you going to say? You seem to have something in mind.
Here's the only way to do it. And we've done it before because a client came to us with an old puppet and the assignment was we needed patterns.
Not only were we to rebuild and refurbish the puppet, we also needed to get patterns so it could be so they could have patterns for it. And so that meant, this is the bravery test of the puppet builder, is I took that finished puppet and I took it apart into pieces and then used all those pieces to create new patterns. So that is one way to do it, perhaps the only way to do it.
And then those pieces were then reassembled back together and refurbed and cleaned up as well. So not only do we have a refurbed puppet, we also then had usable patterns so that that puppet could be recreated by another builder in the future.
And what I needed to do, because I needed to ensure the patterns actually worked, not just in theory, but actually worked. So I had to essentially, not to completion, but build the puppet with those patterns. Because you can't just say, yeah, the patterns work, on your way. You need to test the patterns.
And Maudie says she was afraid that would be the answer.
Yeah, that's the answer. All right, so I'm picking out the seam of the ear just to help. All right, so all that work and it came on too low. I'm just gonna smush it around. Is it center? Is it?
I don't know, look in the mirror.
All right, let me put his glasses on, see if the glasses sit appropriately. There we go. Great. Looking good. All right, let's bring Patrick in, and he's going to put on the puppet eyeballs.
Now, since I cursed Sean with the prospect of making the puppet ears, I'll do the second most onerous task, which is not actually the eyes. It is making the puppet's brain. And I think that's what we're going to do next. We're going to make the interior of the puppet's brain, the skull on the inside. It's kind of the worst step we always forget we have to do, and you get to the end of the build, you're like, I gotta make a puppet brain now. Yuck. And the way to make a puppet brain, the way we've been doing it, is carving it out of a solid block of soft foam. What a brain is a piece of foam that sits inside the puppet's head, not jammed in there real tight, because you still want to make sure you can transfer movement through all of this foam. But really what it does is it sits inside the puppet's head, and it kind of sits like a cradle on top of your hand. It kind of keeps your hand in place. Keeps your hand from floating around on the inside of his head. Except if you were to see the inside of the head here, you'd see that my fingers can do this on the inside. In fact, they can go all the way up to the top of the inside of the head. But you need to be able to have a limiter so that you can actually perform this puppet. So we're going to be using a block of foam, and I'll bring one over here. This is...
While you're getting the foam, Maudie says, "Good job, Sean," and I say, "Thank you. Thank you very much."
This is a block of soft foam, poly foam. It's kind of your basic puppet building foam. This is the foam we used to build puppets out of all the time, pattern foam. But now we use this just for card foam or for things like brains. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a shape that I feel like is going to be a basic good shape for this. I'm going to cut it out on the bandsaw in two different ways. The nice thing is it's not being seen, so you can be a little less precious with how it's being done. So I would say first thing I want to do is figure out how big around this thing is, and I'm just going to estimate. If I look at a roll of gaff tape here and I look at the puppet, I feel like that's pretty good size. This is the art, not science part of it. So I'm just going to trace this gaff tape on this block of foam. Any circle will do, but I feel like this might be good. And then I'm just going to cut that out, and this will turn out with a little tube shape, and I'm going to take this over to the bandsaw to slice it. So follow me, it's going to be a loud noise, and we're just going to cut out this circle here to start with. Obviously, follow all safety protocols when you're using any tools or equipment in the shop. I'm going to turn it on, and I'm just going to cut it around. So this shape is too big, not quite right, but at least it's a starting point. So bring it back over here and figure out, I want the brain to be pretty much here and up. So if I were to measure that, I would say I would need it to be, let's say about, maybe about 6 inches in height. Or maybe 7 inches, maybe like, 6, 7, 6, 7. If you know what that means, put it in the chat and give us $6 or $7. Just kidding. All right, so if I look at this here, 6 inches about here. Let me mark that. I'm gonna slice that part off there. But I'm actually see if I can. No, I'll just cut it off first. All right, I can slice this off. So back to the bandsaw. I'm gonna cut this piece off. This I'm going to save. That's a good piece of foam. We can use that for another project. All right, so we're looking at this here. How's it feeling? Size and scale wise? Yeah, okay, pretty good. Let me just get the top in a more conical shape. To do that, I'm going to be using some blades. I'm going to start with a fresh, new, sharp Persona blade. These are the blades we use when we're doing puppet building. They're nice and sharp. And we can buy them in bulk, and foam will dull them quickly, but I'm just going to run it along the edge and just take off this here. I'll be pretty aggressive with how much I'm taking off because it's got to fit up inside that little conical shaped head. All right, and I'm going to continue here, same thing, because this is not going to be a part of the finished outside of the puppet. You can be a little more, lenient on yourself with how fine these cuts are. You just want to make sure it fits inside the head without being packed in too densely. So, yeah, I'm going to cut some more away. From the top, I might actually end up using scissors as well to trim away even more. Just kind of get a shape that fits nicely inside this puppet's head. A little more here. Take off that. Let's see, I haven't quite done enough, but I might be moving the scissors soon. And the other shape that we're going to be starting to think about is where our hand goes, because our hand needs to fit inside this puppet. And I'll show you what that means.
Fresh blade cuts are so satisfying, says Madi Puppets.
Oh, they are. They're very satisfying.
And when it's not fresh, it's really, really
Ugh, it's the worst.
the worst.
The worst. All right, so this here, not quite there, but you see how that's kind of becoming the same sort of shape. I'm going to start using some scissors to trim down. In fact, I have an old pair of scissors that are really loose that I'm going to grab those. They're pretty good for cutting foam.
This looks like one of those coconuts.
Yeah, it does.
It's coconuts you buy.
Yeah, there's a straw in there. Delicious.
No, coconuts.
All right, so I'm just going to hack apart some of this stuff here. Just trying to get this a little smaller in scale. I'm cutting in one direction with the scissors, and then I'm going to reverse and cut in the other direction with the scissors. That's a good way to start taking foam down in layers. Kind of like it becomes like a little grid shape. And that way one part doesn't come down much more than the other. I'm going to reverse the grid again this way now. Your hand will get tired surprisingly quickly. So here's a trick we learned, which is you can actually loosen your scissors that you're doing for this sort of work by loosening the screw that connects the blades together. That little screw there, you can loosen it so you can change the tension of your scissors. That was was something I never knew before that I learned from one of our builders at our shop. That's where you learn a lot of tips, a lot of tricks and tips. All right, I'm gonna cut one again.
Here's another great question.
Yeah.
Do you have a giant bin under the table, or do you just sweep after the project is done?
Haha, great. Don't show the floor. Don't show the floor. It's terrible. Okay. We do have a trash can. Most of it's not making it in. Most of it is making it onto the floor. And then we're just going to sweep when we're done. In fact, that's one of our very first Puppeteers festivals. We bought this book about basic puppet building. And one of the tips that they would say is keep your work surface clean. Just brush everything onto the floor and sweep often. So we always like to say we sweep often. So I'm cutting this down. I'm going to jam it into the head, but I feel like it still might be a little too tight. You can see how it's kind of taking shape there. So I'm just going to trim a little more with the large scissors. If this were the finished puppet, I'd be then going on to, to the smaller scissors for more refined cuts. But this is not going to be seen, so I'm just trying to take some of these edges down.
One thing you may notice, one of the realities of building puppets is as you're working along, your work surface gets smaller and smaller and smaller because all of the stuff starts to encroach.
Yeah.
Before long, you're working in a little 6-inch square space. You have to go, okay, hang on. I got to clean my desk here.
Yes, exactly. All right, so I'm just going to jam this into the head and see how big it's doing. It's too big still. It's
Too big.
Too
Too
big.
big. Too big.
take some blade, take some of these edges off again. All right, while I'm cutting this foam, if anyone has any questions they would like to ask, feel free to ask away and we'll answer as many as we can.
I have a question. If our viewers still watching from Egypt, has the 6-7 meme made it there?
Great question.
And if you don't understand it, that's totally cool. Because we don't even understand it.
No.
In fact, someone watching this video a year from now are going to say, what are they talking about?
Exactly.
I'm sure Marty's heard her share of 6-7.
So I'm just slicing this down, get a little lower profile on this thing. All right, that's feeling a bit like the shape.
And she says, confirming, oh yes, I have indeed.
Okay. All right, so now it's feeling a little more like it's gonna fit, but it needs to accommodate my hand. So I'm going to kind of figure out, my hand needs to kind of go on a shape underneath. I don't want to flat on this. I'm just gonna take a little wedge out like that. I'll mark it up. I feel like I want to take about maybe this much here. This is the art, not science part of puppet building. I'm just going to do this. And I'm going to use the blade to kind of just hog out a little shape. And what you're trying to do is accommodate the shape of your hand as it fits inside the puppet and make room for that. So take the blade here and just kind of carve out. It's a nice satisfying sound. You want to carve the foam. Be very careful not to cut your fingers.
Yeah, carve the foam, not your finger. These are very sharp blades.
Yeah.
You'll cut yourself before you know it.
Yeah. You'd be like, why am I
Before you feel it.
bleeding? So it's going to kind of be like this. I'm going to cut a little more away. That. You can see why the brain is sort of the pain, because it's like, I mean, you can build the brain earlier in the process. You don't have to leave it to the last as we've done here. But it's sort of like nearing the finish line, like, ugh, I feel like I have to start a whole new thing.
We have a new viewer, Puppetry210, just left a comment saying hi.
Hello? All right, so that's going to sort of fit like this on my head, I think. So
On your hand.
On my hand. Thank you. Not on my head. I'm going to take this foam and compress it all the way down as small as I can get it. and jam it inside this puppet's head.
And Monty adds, which I think is true, still faster to make a brain than a mouth plate strap.
Oh yeah.
And also
More versatile.
more versatile. It makes your puppet more useful because you can always, if you have someone's hand who's smaller, you can always put another piece of foam in. In fact, when we did all the puppets for Crank Yankers, one of the things we had along with the puppets was a whole, basically a whole case of brains. You just dropped an eyebrow. You just dropped an eyebrow that we need.
On the ground?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, we had a whole thing of brains and bumpers that people can use. All right, so our viewer from Egypt. So the thing I was asking, I'm just curious, and if you don't know what it means, that's totally cool. Has the 6'7" meme made it over to Egypt, where kids go 6'7"? And then we do have a question. What is your favorite material for puppet construction?
It's a great question. I'll get to that. Let me first show you that the brain is inside the head. It's a little too long. I need to cut a little more off the bottom. So I'm going to be a little more aggressive about how much I take off. And let me think about what my favorite puppet building material. Well, I'll tell you. I mean, a favorite. It's a classic that we've rarely had an opportunity to use. Only early on in our puppet building did we get to, which was I loved the opportunity to use the old original fleece when we ever had a chance to use it.
Yeah, the old classic fleece.
Haven't had a chance to use it recently, but it really was there's a reason why it was such a popular material and it was used for so many different characters and stuff.
So Patrick modifies the brain. We have another question. Where do you get your fabrics from?
Great question. So fabrics can come from all sorts of places. More and more we're buying them online, but when we buy furs, really the best way to buy a fur is to buy it in person so you can actually see it, see how it looks, see how it feels.
Yeah, more often than not, you'll buy furs, and you'll think they're two different colors. Like you will get 2
Online,
yards.
you buy it online.
You buy it online. You get 1 yard of this brown and 1 yard of this lighter brown, only to discover that they're the exact same material, just photographed under different lighting situations.
So when we were in LA, we would go to a place called City Fabric in the Fashion District downtown. We still buy materials from there all the time. That they're really good. And then there are some online sources that are good. We would get our fleece from different places. Puppet Pelts sold a good fleece for a while. And they still do. They have
Sederma.
yes, Sederma, or also
No, not Sederma.
San Francisco. I had it in my head. Anyway, there's a textiles. Georgia Stage was a place we got fleece from a while, and the place in San Francisco will come to us eventually.
I'm gonna check because I just chased it out of my brain.
Yeah, Sean said it.
Dharma
Trading Company. Dharma Trading Company is a good place to get white fleece on the bolt that you can then dye different materials, different colors.
And then as you buy these materials, inevitably you buy a little extra. Always, you should try to buy a little extra.
Yeah.
And then you start to have a collection where pretty soon you've got bins and bins and bins of furs. That's where we got the yellow fur for this guy's arms. And the first place we shop is in our own storehouse of materials, because it doesn't cost anything, and also it can use material that we have on hand, which is the best whenever you can use that material.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite puppet building material?
Old fleece, the original old fleece, is the one perfect puppet building material.
Here's another puppet building material I like. When we're working with fur, a fur that has a little bit of stretch with a backing that's not too heavy, not like a carpet, that is pliable, flexible, and easy to work with. All right, I'm going to try the brain inside the head again and see if I cut enough to make that work.
And while you do that, we have a question. How do you store your fabric?
Oh, that's a great question. So we store our fabric in bins. We store actually under the countertop here we have a bunch of polar fleece that we bought that we use for puppets, but also for patterning.
Mostly we bought that because Joann's was going out of business.
Exactly, and we knew that the colors that they had, and it was so cheap, so we bought a lot of it. But as far as how we store it, we have bins, and we store generally by color. I know some people store by type, which is another way to do it. But we store by color.
And one of the tricks is, I mean, furs will go in one, fleece will go in another.
Yeah.
But with bins, clear bins.
Yes.
You got to get clear bins.
Yeah.
So you can see what you're looking for. And then someone wants to ask, are you guys are amazing puppet builders? Thank you. And brother puppeteers. Yes, not only are we brothers, we are twins. And then we have another new person who just commented, too many bins of extra fabric.
Yeah.
And then Monty says, so all our craft spaces look the same.
Oh.
Not only do all of our craft spaces look the same, but when we've had the good fortune to build at places like Jim Henson's Creature Shop, their craft spaces look the same. They just have more bins.
Yeah.
More bins, bigger bins. That's all.
So it's feeling pretty good height-wise to me for now. I can adjust it, but it feels like it's a little tight on the sides. So I'm going to take a pair of scissors again and trim the sides down once again so it fits a little better.
By the way, it might seem like Patrick's taken a long time building something that isn't even going to be seen, but in reality, this is one of the most important parts of the puppet because this is how it will fit on the puppeteer's hand. So it's definitely worth taking the time to make sure the brain is the right size so that it keeps the hand in place, but also isn't so big that it restricts motion.
Yeah, you don't want it to be so tight that it just kind of packs in there and you can't get it to move at all. Again, I'm using that cross system to trim down the foam here to kind of take it down in layers.
To Marty's point about craft spaces looking the same, even when you go to like the touring the Muppet Workshop in New York or the Henson Workshop in New York, it's all the same. The buildings are nicer, they might be bigger,
Yeah.
but as far as like bins of materials and workstations with scissors and thread and
It's a very familiar environment. We one of the fun projects we got to work on was a show called Kidding, which was it was a Showtime series that starred Jim Carrey, and it was directed by Michel Gondry. And the concept of the show was he was a host of a children's show. There it is, now available on DVD and Blu-ray. But he was the host of a children's show. It was a drama for adults, not a kids show. But the show that he was the host of had puppets in it, and so part of the set was the studio where they shot the show, but also the backstage area, the costume area, and the puppet workshop, where his sister in the show built all the puppets, who was played by
Catherine
Keener,
Keener.
who's great. But and so in order to make the puppet shop look like a legitimate puppet shop, the set decoration team came to our puppet studio and took a bunch of photos of what was there. Photos of the bins, photos of materials, photos of whatever, so they could source similar types of things. In fact, we even rented them a bunch of puppet parts and pieces that could be used and hung around the shop in different ways to make it look legitimate. And they did a great job. In fact, so great to the point that there was a time in which we actually worked on one of the workshop tables to make some modifications to the puppets using resources from the set that was set decoration in order to get it done. So when you walked in there, it really felt like a legitimate working puppet workshop.
Here's a question. Speaking of puppets.
And they were really happy when they found that we had sometimes would store patterns in white boxes that were not clear, because they could put those on the top shelf and label them, and that saves you a lot of art direction.
Yeah, so if you watch Kidding and you see shots in the workshop, it's the TV version of our workshop.
Yeah.
It's a little smaller because they're going for that small look.
Yeah.
But someone says, hi ho, are both of you excited for the Muppet Show revival that comes out next year?
Yeah, of course. I'll watch that.
One of the fun things about that Muppet Show revival is it was directed by Alex Timbers, who we had the good fortune to work with on the Pee Wee Herman show. So, yeah, for sure.
I'll watch it. It's on Disney Plus, I think, right?
I guess I'll have to get Disney Plus again.
All right, time to renew the subscription. A reason to renew. Let's just call that.
I can't keep track of all the streaming services I've canceled. I just watch YouTube now.
Including YouTube Live. So
Yeah.
geez. All right, so I'm trimming this down here. All right. All right, so now we'll see if this fits even better. Try to get all that little crummy dust off this thing. Put it in the puppet's head. And hopefully Sean is feeling a little better about having done the ears. Nope, nothing will make him feel better.
No different. I feel no different.
Fair enough. All right, so I'll try this brain inside the puppet head now. Let's see how that fits. Hardest part is getting it past the mouth palate. All right, laying in there. Feeling pretty good. You can also kind of adjust it up and down if you need to. And what I'm gonna do, last thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put some fleece on. I'm gonna glue some fleece onto the bottom there. I'll just do it off camera. And I'll spray it. All right, it's feeling good. Maybe a little tight still. But
Let me
I
try.
feel like it's heading out. Sean's gonna try it out and see if he thinks it's
Time for a left-handed puppeteer to try. That's for those of you playing at home. I'm a left-handed puppeteer and Patrick's right-handed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we'll tight still. Taking out on the sides.
On the sides, will do. Monty Puppet says, so happy to catch you guys live. I'm traveling home from the Puppet Potlatch in Indiana this past weekend. Awesome.
Wow.
Cool. Well, that sounds like a lot of fun. I look forward to seeing some photos from that.
So a little more on the sides. Okay. Left and right side. You can see it's kind of crumpling a little bit.
Yeah. In fact, when you pull it out, you can kind of see the pressure of the tension is how it kind of, you can almost like the gives you a clue of what needs to come out. So,
For those of you hanging on, the next step after this is going to be the eyes. And then we'll stitch on we'll pull the costume on after that, put on the glasses, and this puppet will be complete. We might be doing a little trimming on the fingers and all that. But this is the third part in a series where we started with an old puppet that we made 12, 13 years ago. And we used that old puppet to pull patterns. And in the second video, we created the patterns and rebuilt the puppet. And now in this final video, we're adding all the features and doing all those other things, the last 10% that takes a lot of time, but still. And by the way, I'll just say, not that we do this for tips, but hey, if you're watching and you like what we're doing, we got $5 already today, and we're trying to get to 1 million, just 1 million. So if you want to help us reach that $1 million goal USD, you're welcome to give us a tip, obviously just for fun.
and also, if there's any puppet building techniques that you would like to see us demonstrate in a future video, live or otherwise, go ahead and comment that. We like to keep a list of what people are interested in. The one we know for sure, pattern making. We hear that one a lot.
And we did cover some of the process
Right,
in the
starting
second
from scratch.
video.
I think people are confused. How do you go from nothing to pattern?
Yeah.
And there is a way to do that,
true.
which we will do a video at some point taking you through that. I know some people have also talked about mechs. They want to learn about mechs, which is, we use a lot of puppet mechs. I will say we collaborate when we do our puppet mechs with some incredible builders, including Greg Ballora. Check him out and follow him on Instagram. He does most of the mechs that we've used for our puppets, and his work is amazing. Not only an incredible puppeteer, but just an expert builder with really, really fine work.
And that's a good tip in general, which is, when you're in puppetry, there's a community of puppeteers, and a lot of times the best thing you can do is bring in someone who is an expert at something that you're not necessarily an expert at. Because, like your puppet network is as big as your Rolodex, if a Rolodex is even a thing anymore, which I think it probably isn't. Your contact list,
There you go.
your group chat.
All right. I'm gonna see how this fits. Still might be a little tight,
But we're gonna.
from there I think we're.
It's gonna be perfect.
Yeah, now we're just fiddling and fussing. We're not done until we say it is. So that, so like that. Into the head.
So you can see with puppet building, there's a lot of guess and check too, and some of it comes down to personal preference. Some people want it to feel real fit and secure. Some people like it to be a little space.
I just want to make sure that whatever movement possibility, it's always a choice. Try to make it as much of a choice as the puppeteer can make. So if it's restricted and not moving a lot, that's because the puppeteer chooses not to move it a lot, rather than the puppet can't move a lot. Yeah. All right, we could do a little more trimming and finessing, but I feel like for the purposes of this, I think we're in a pretty good place. I do want to put some fleece on that, but maybe we'll wait to do that.
Yeah.
What I would do, and we'll do this probably after the fact, because once it's done, it's a pain to kind of do it over again, is I like to glue fleece to the back of this here, just this side. And that way, when your hand's inside, you're not up against raw foam. It has a nice sort of comfort fit to it, sort of soft feel, and it just is nice. And also it's a barrier between your fingers and just the foam.
If you wanted to trim away at that and get the fleece in while I do the eyes.
Okay.
Yeah,
You
great.
can show. All right. Sean's gonna put the eyes in place.
So Monty was asking about the bin under our feet, or the mess, and the mess is growing under the desk, but don't worry about that. So lots of different ways to make puppet eyes. I'm going to show something really fast.
Continuing to trim. So if you wonder what that weird noise is in the background, now you know what it is.
So we just started using a new technique to make puppet eyes, which we're pretty excited about, which is we took our buck, we made a silicone mold, and then we cast the eyes in this casting plastic, and then we cast the this little nylon screw or bolt rather right into it. So it's one piece basically. So that's one way that we've really started doing eyes. We like that. That's not how I'm going to do the eyes today. These eyes, just because of the character, are just these little black animal eyes. And animal eyes come in all shapes and sizes and colors. We have a little bin that we pull from, and we purchase them occasionally. We have some googly eyes in here and all sorts of fun eyes. So, so I'm going to use these, and I have eye holes that are positioned, but again, I'm just going to put the glasses on since it needs to work with the glasses. And I see those eye holes are not quite centered in the where the glasses are going to sit. So that is fine. I'm just going to remake new holes. That's the nice thing about this fur, is it really, you can just snip and stitch and snip and stitch and all that. So I want the eyes to be somewhat close together. I'm thinking the first one's going to go here. So literally I'm just going to snip a hole in and into the foam as well. So I'll get one eye positioned, and then I'll get the second one positioned. So I'm pulling it to make sure it's going all the way through the foam. So the nice thing about having it go through the foam a little bit is when it pulls in, it's not just sitting on the surface. It kind of gives a little bit of character. But since I'm going to snap these in as animal eyes, I really want to get the position just right. All right, so it looks pretty good. I think the second one is already well positioned. Get the second eye here. And again, I'm pushing that through the fur and the foam. So it has the effect of drawing it in a little bit. Patrick? Seems to look good with the glasses.
Oh, great. If it looks at the glasses, then here, look, it's off a little. Glasses are off a little. Glasses go this way a little bit. No, slightly. Split the difference.
I can't see what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I think this ear is too low.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's good.
Great. All right, so these animal eyes, the reason why I was so fussy about it is because we're not screwing them in place. We're actually going to use these animal safety eye clips, because that's what they are. And that just puts them in. And now, if I want to take the eye off, for a locked character is perfectly fine, but for a rental character, we would never do this. We'd find a way to attach them less permanently, because once these are on, you have to like take the head apart and get the whole thing out and do that. So now it's time to be brave. I'm gonna say this is gonna work. So I'm gonna push the little thing. I'm just gonna do as few clicks as I can get away with. There's one click. One click will hold. That'll be good. That draws it in a little bit without having it draw in so much that it looks like a silly, it looks too drawn in. All right, so I'm gonna do that again with one click. Did I get it? No. A little bit of foam in the way. Push it in with one click. First one is so easy, of course. There we go, one click. All right, there are the eyes. All right, so let's get his glasses on. Oh no, we should do the costume next. While the head is off, glasses are the last thing we do. So, Brain's coming along. Oh, actually, before we get his costume on, I want to show you some finishing fur technique. This, if you tuned in, you saw that these were machine stitched. So what I can do now, you can see these are pretty apparent seams at the fingers. So what I can do is just take a pin like this and just kind of scrape across that seam and just help fluff the fur fibers out of the seam. It's a little time consuming, but I think it helps make it look a little more finished. So I just kind of did that a little bit, scrubbed it across, and you can see that one. This one's not done yet. I'll just scrub the pin across, like so. All right. Scrubbing the pin across the fibers to get the, across the seam to get the fibers out.
While he's doing that, if you have any questions you want to ask, this is a great time to ask them, either about the step we're involved in now, or the step that or any steps that we did previously, or anything like that. So puppet building questions or puppeteering questions, go ahead and ask away. We are, believe it or not, coming very close to the end of this puppet build. And we'll be sure to post final photos and videos. You'll see those. We'll post them on our Instagram. And, of course, we'll be doing some more YouTube Lives as well as we continue to share the puppet building knowledge that we've gained over the years.
All right, so I'm just scrubbing the pin across these fingers and freeing the fibers from that seam to cover the seam a little bit. Pretty much makes it disappear. Now this is just some of the finishing work. You can see why even like the last 10% could still take quite a bit of time. Because also last 10% is very important. Because how you finish, you know, can make the difference between a really nice, beautiful puppet and something that is less than that. So scrubbing across the seam, getting all those fibers. You're not going to get every single fiber, and that's fine because people are not going to be, most likely, not looking at the puppet as close as you would be here. All right. I'm going to do one more thing. There's always one more thing to do. I'm going to do a little trimming on these fingers. Just a little bit. Just to give it a little something special. I'll show you the scissors I'm using.
Here's a question someone has while you're getting the scissors. Do you know if there's a puppet festival or convention happening in the West Coast anytime? Great question. Puppet festivals or conventions are a great way to learn about puppetry and puppet building. If anyone has an answer to that, feel free to write it in the chat because I actually don't know. But I know a resource you can go to, and that is you can visit the Puppeteers of America, visit their website, or learn about your local Puppeteers Guild, and you can find information there about what events are happening either locally, nationally, or regionally.
Or even internationally.
Or internationally as well.
So these are called thinning shears, and they're great because you can cut fur with them and it will really hide those seams. You won't have a blunt cut. And I'm going to use these just to thin the fur just around the fingers, give them a little definition. I'm going to leave the arms just as they are, but I'm just kind of trimming up a little bit in between here, just so it has a little definition.
Monty has a great piece of information to share, which is there actually is a meeting happening soon to discuss the possibility of future West Coast festivals. So something that sounds like will be coming soon. But in the meantime, if you are not a member of your local Puppeteers Guild, or the Puppeteers of America, or UNICEF, no, not UNICEF.
UNICEF,
Yeah, you can join that too.
UNICEF.
What's it called? The International Puppetry one, which is called
Unknowable.
That's unknowable as well. Just like the metric system, it cannot be known. Unima.
Yeah.
Yeah. Join your local guild, join the national or international puppetry organizations, and that's a great way to be involved, to meet people, but also to learn about festivals and opportunities to perform or to see other performers as well.
Yeah, we learned so many of these puppet building techniques by attending festivals. It's been a while since I've been to a festival.
Madi is Unima. She's on it. I mean, she mentioned that. So Unima, if anyone needs to know the spelling of it, UNIMA. It's
French.
It stands for something, but that it's also...
It's a marionette.
Is it?
The M is marionette.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh. I don't know what it stands for. If anyone knows what it stands for...
It's French.
Okay.
It's the Union Nationale de Marionette.
Now we get to see Sean's impression of a French accent, insulting people from that great country.
All around the globe. All right, so just kind of trimmed up the fingers a little bit. I'm going to come through with these. These are not thinning shears. They're just straight up scissors. I'm just going to add a little bit of definition. Just kind of at the tips. Just kind of gives it a little, just a little something else, a little something.
And then Monty, for those interested in West Coast puppet guilds, has mentioned that there are guilds in San Diego, LA, San Francisco, and also there's one, if there had been one, I think there still is, in Orange County. And she stands for Union Internationale de la Marionnette.
See?
So, Sean got it.
This means International Puppet.
Mm-hmm. So those puppets are just, basically we're taking furry fingers and making them look a little more HD.
Yeah.
HD ready.
You can kind of see before and after here.
Before, after.
Just a little bit, but gives a little more definition. I mean, it's all about, the character you're trying to create. So if it's, a character trait that it's supposed to have really furry fingers, then you don't want to do this, but that's not the case. So we're just going to add a little definition.
This here is the brain. On this step here, I glued this piece of fleece to it. I'm just going to trim it off.
Yeah, these thinning shears are great because you can snip, 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 and you don't get a hard line. One of the worst things about trimming fur, especially since it's usually the last step, is to go along and all of a sudden, chunk, you just get a chunk out, which is, and with a hard line, now you have to work all that out. It's like, oh, great. Nothing like a finishing step that
Undoes all your hard work.
Yeah, prolongs the process and undoes.
Christine Papalexis has joined. She says, thanks for the great demo, guys. Well, thank you, Christine.
Well, thank you. Thanks for joining.
Yeah. I guess this is the time to mention that it was Christine Papalexis that told us about thinning shears in the first place.
That's
So
true.
if you want to learn about puppet building, get involved with your local community and start to meet a lot of people, because there are puppet builders who have tips and tricks and techniques out there that that you can benefit from. Everyone out there can benefit from.
Yeah, some of the best puppet building learning that I got was from just other people doing things slightly different than I would do it and go, oh, never thought of that. Great idea. All right. So there are the fingers. Okay. And while I got the, wait, let me do a little more of this. Just at the tips of the fingers. Just kind of give it that little character. Stuff that no one's going to notice, honestly, but okay. Careful not to trim down too far. Don't want to make any irreversible mistakes. All right. Okay. Now while I got the scissors out, I'm also going to do a little trim right here on the mouth corner. Just going to bring it down almost to backing. Just the more we can get rid of any excess material on the inside of the mouth, the better. So while I'm in trim mode, do a little trim there. I'm doing the same on the other side. Just in the corner. That's where it's going to really bend and flex. Okay. So now, before we put the head on, this is one of the benefits of puppets having, by the way, this, we can add to our garbage pile. Don't need that anymore. One of the benefits,
What'd you forget? Oh, the eyebrows.
eyebrows.
Excellent.
Okay, we're gonna stick the eyebrows on because these were stitched on previously, and then I'll bring you in to stitch on the soul patch. Death by 1,000 details. That's really what it is. So for these eyebrows, instead of stitching them on, I'm going to use this top stick again. We already have the eyebrows from the old version of the puppet, which we're going to use. It's an interesting material. I like it.
That's what your hedgehog puppet was made out of.
Yeah. So I'm just going to go ahead and just take the stick the eyebrow on, and do the same here. Then I would use these, hand me those little orange scissors, please. These less than new scissors to trim, because the wig tape will really gum up your scissors.
If you do get a lot of wig tape on your scissors, you can use things like Goof Off to clean the blades of your scissors carefully. Just put the Goof Off on a paper towel and gently run it against the blade, and that will clean all the kind of adhesive off.
Yeah, and we gotta remember, wig tape is designed to stick to a sweaty head, and so it is sticky.
Maudie mentions that she had a great workshop this weekend with Kurt Hunter, and she's looking forward to trying out what she learned. So yeah, exactly. That's the great thing about attending any of these festivals or workshops or conventions, is learning what you can apply to your own project.
Yeah, sometimes it's just fun to see how other people do it.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Okay, so I feel like this guy kind of had a little character, like a little raised eyebrow look. So we'll do that. I'll position this one first, kind of a up eyebrow, and it just pull off the sticky. I'm gonna figure out the position, and down. And then this one. It's funny how much the eyebrows can really change the character. Kind of give him a little kind of expression like that.
Ooh, a new tip here that we might have to employ in our next build from Christine. She says you can also use titanium non-stick scissors.
Oh,
Fisker makes small and large ones for cutting sticky things. Good to know. All right,
Great.
everyone, write that one down. Titanium non-stick scissors made by Fisker. There
all right,
you go.
so here we are. We got our eyebrows. All right, let's swap out. Patrick's gonna sew on the little soul patch here. As this character has a soul patch. Which way does it go? This way?
Unknowable.
Unknowable. I think it goes this way. How did these things go? This way?
I'll figure it out.
All right, here comes Patrick to put on the little soul patch.
All right, so we're coming down to the end of it. I do want to show you that while Sean was doing that, I did manage to line the brain here. So a little bit of foam. I I use polar fleece. We have a lot of it. It's soft, has a little bit of stretch, and that is just going to go, and it creates a nice little cushion for your hand, soft and comfortable feeling. So I'm going to put that inside the head as well. I'm just going to squish it all down, jam it up inside, like so, and then adjust it. It can be adjusted a little. Really what this does is just keeps your hand in place and makes it nice and comfortable for you to perform the puppet. So, all right, the little soul patch here. I'm going to stitch it on the back. I'm going to get rid of some of these errant threads that are just sort of hanging out on the back here. They like to kind of, from the old stitching, whatever we did before. Just going to get rid of that stuff. There we go. And seems like this is pretty symmetrical looking. Just going to get one of the little threads off. And this will be top stitching down. We're going to be using, once again, the ladder stitch that we used to attach the nose. Just getting all these little threads out of here. I think, once again, I'll use the yellow. I mean, again, I could go for the gray. When you stitch two materials that are different colors, you sort of pick one, because you'll never find a thread that's in between. And I think the soul patch goes like this.
Yeah.
Oops, like that. Right. So I'm just gonna make sure it's symmetrical. I'm gonna pin that in place using these yellow pins that evaporate after you use them. They just disappear eventually. I don't know where they all go, but they all disappear. And I'm gonna pin this in place and then just do a little stitch around. And then we're coming down very close to the end. We'll be putting costume on, putting the rods in as well. Although every time we say we're coming out of the end, we always find about 5, 6, or 6, 7 more steps.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, we are close to the end,
6, 7,
considering.
6, 7 more steps. All right, great. So, and then we also wanted to add a little more gray to this. I'm going to show you how we're going to do that by using the same material. A little technique you can use. I don't know if anyone else feels the same way, but I always feel a sense of accomplishment and a sense of satisfaction. I don't know if you guys feel the same way, when I can actually finish a spool of thread.
Yes.
There's no better feeling than finally finishing a spool of thread. I don't know why that is. It's
almost as satisfying as eating the last chip.
Exactly. Yeah. If you're the kind of person who likes to eat the last chip, then you will also enjoy using the last bit of a spool of thread. Now we still have a little more to use. There's one more stitch in there.
And unfortunately, there's nothing more dissatisfying than putting something like this back in the bin.
Yeah. At that point, just find something yellow that needs to be sewn and just get it done. So it's the little things in life.
Huh?
So
Isn't that the way?
yeah, I'm just gonna stitch the soul patch on using, once again, our ladder stitch. And we like that stitch because you can stitch it from above, not from the back, and from the top, not from the back. And also, it is virtually invisible once you stitch that in place. So. again. I'm going to start in the... I'll start on the top. Get the top looking nice. Make sure I'm symmetrical. This would be a bummer to get this off. To get this not be symmetrical. Now, if we were recreating a, like say a famous puppet character, then the entire time we'd be doing this, we'd be checking back with our photos, or references, and checking back video references and all sorts of stuff. In fact, we were on a podcast recently. Check it out if you want to. It's called the Eyes On Podcast. Our friends over at Retrofit Films, it's the new podcast they're doing. And we talk a lot about puppet building, puppet making, and puppetry. And one of the questions they ask is when we're recreating characters like for the Pee Wee Herman show or The Simpsons, do they provide you with all the information? And what are you guys working with usually? And the answer is everything and sometimes nothing. So for this character, of course, he's not necessarily that well known. At least he is in certain circles, but not in many. So we're going to try to get the look as close as possible. But if we're building puppets, for the Simpsons and stuff, I think for that episode we had turnarounds. We also used a lot of references by using the action figures that already existed at the time in order to give us a sense of what they look like in 3 dimensions. When we rebuilt the puppets for the Pee Wee Herman show, we're using mostly photos and frame grabs from the show itself. For Crank Yankers, a lot of photo reference, videos, and we did have a couple of the original puppets on hand. Not all of them, but at least enough to get some measurements from. And that was a key part of having those characters come together. So if this were a puppet that I was building based on an existing property or recreating it, then I would be taking measurements to making sure this patch goes on exactly where it needs to go, and constantly referencing photographs and stuff like that. But this is not the case. So I'm not doing that. All right, so once again, ladder stitch, I grab the material, the yellow material here, boom. And then I grab a little bit of the gray fur. And as I cinch it up, I'm just pulling those materials together, and the frayed edge gets tucked underneath, and therefore it becomes basically an invisible seam. And you'll see a little chunk here. If we were to do this again, I think because this had been machine stitched, which we wouldn't machine stitch fur for the face. I'm not sure why that was the case, but why decisions being made at the time are made for their own reasons. But because there's a bit of an exposed frayed edge there on the inside, in fact, it's this thread that kind of drives me crazy. I just want to get rid of it. All right, so we're just stitching this up here, coming very close to the end of the whole project. And if you ever want to see how we got here, you can go back and watch. We started with a 13-year-old puppet, and we dissected it in our first video and outlined all of the puppet building mistakes that we made, and they were in multitudes, innumerable mistakes, so many mistakes that every little thing made it a terrible puppet to perform. There's no reason why this puppet should have been hard to use. And then the next video, we did our rebuild of that. So we pulled new patterns from the old foam. We managed to wash and salvage the original fur, which is good.
Except for the hands, we had to use new fur for the arms.
Yeah, new fur for the arms.
Because we wanted longer arms.
Longer arms and better hands for the size of the puppet. And then now we are in the finishing stages, just to kind of take it up over the finish line.
By the way, I don't know if Christine Papalexis is still watching, but I remember when we were working on Kidding, and she was in the workshop working on one of the puppets for Kidding. I forget which one, but she asked us, why do you make your hands separate from your arms? And we said, we don't know. And she is the one that first introduced us to this idea that we still use today, which we used here, where the fleece of the hand and the arm is all one piece, and it's doing that machine stitching and then trimming after the fact. So another puppet building technique that we learned from a fellow puppet builder.
Mm-hmm. And there was also a puppet builder, Carol Binion, that she said, oh, you guys hand stitch your fur? I'm like, yeah. She's like, oh, just machine stitching. You'll never see that seam. I'm like, oh, never thought about that.
A revelation.
Mm-hmm. Revelation. Also, maybe part of being a puppet builder is being willing to, be open to new approaches and be okay with the idea that maybe the way you did it before that you thought was great was, maybe the things we're doing now, we're going to watch this video in another 13 years and be like, ugh, why did we do it that way? Because we'll have a whole new series of techniques and stuff. And hey, maybe this puppet gets taken apart again and rebuilt then.
And Christine says, LOL, so glad I could give you a usable tip.
All right.
Absolutely. So far, two tips. The thinning shears and how to pattern hands and arms.
I will say, for anyone out there who is interested in learning how to build puppets, opportunities like this aren't always coming around, but if you have an opportunity to work in a shop with other builders, that is great. When we first built puppets, we were self-taught at the beginning, and then we attended a puppeteers festival and learned the basic tenets of puppet foam construction, which got us very far. We then were lucky enough to work as builders at Jim Henson's Creature Shop, and then we got some more sort of formal instruction from some of the builders there, which really helped. And then the next level of puppet building is really what we learned from the people that we worked with, either in that shop environment or our own shop environment. Our goal is always, when we were hiring people, we say we want to hire people who are better than us, because A, that means the puppets are going to be better, but B, it means that we can learn from them as well.
Christine says, and the nonstick scissors. That's 3.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah, we're definitely getting those. That's right after this. We're gonna rush to Amazon.
Yeah.
And then Madi says, along the lines of the spirit of helping puppeteers, helping each other only elevates the craft. And she says, thank you so much for sharing your tips, tricks, and wisdom.
Oh, thank you. We agree, and we appreciate you recognizing that. But we're not magicians. We don't benefit from keeping our tricks secret. It doesn't matter. We always say that we know what we know is not a secret, because somehow we know it. And if we know it, then there's no reason why everybody shouldn't know it. It's not about how you apply it. That's what's going to make the difference between a good puppet and not.
Yeah, we know it's not a secret because we know it.
Yeah. So if we know the tricks, there's no reason why you should know them as well. So, and really we call them tricks, and they're not tricks. They're techniques. They're techniques. And the more people that, I would much rather live in a world where there were more quality puppet builders out there than not, because A, it elevates the craft and the art form. We have an opportunity to watch and see better and better puppet work out there, whether it's on YouTube or on television or the movies. But also, selfishly, it creates a talent pool. Now suddenly there are more people out there with the skills that if we ever needed to bring on more hands for a project or whatever, suddenly more people understand the basic tenets of puppet building, and then we can plug them into a project. So the more people that know how to do this stuff, I think the better off everybody is.
Yeah, and also there's no point to amassing all these skills and then selfishly taking them to your grave.
Yeah.
Especially when so much of the puppet building community is a word of mouth community. It's not like
Great, we're back, and so
Okay, the soul patch.
oh, wait,
is
hold on,
all-
maybe not quite yet. The clicker's not working, but I think we are. We're back. So Christine says now we just need more fun puppet projects to puppeteer on.
Heck yes.
Exactly. Yeah.
Someone out there, let's create new. We're trying to do that as well.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so soul patch is on. Okay, so the brain is in with the foam. Yeah, feels nice. Some good movement possibilities. Let's get this costume on, and you'll see why it's beneficial to have puppet heads that come off from the bodies. So we're actually putting the original t-shirt that was on, I think, is too big. So we're putting on another t-shirt. Might be just as long, but the length of the shirt doesn't bother me because
it's going to hang below frame.
Yeah, these were not custom made. They may have been modified slightly,
Mhm.
but ideally this would be a custom made costume. But we're trying to dress it back to the way this puppet was in its original getup.
So you can see the benefit of not having to pull it over a head. So I can just go like this.
Yeah, if only actors' heads could come off. Think how easy it would be to get them dressed for theater and stuff.
I know, really.
Talk about a quick change. Just pop their head off. Easy.
All right. And then the other arm comes through. Now I'm teaching you how to put a shirt on. Easier without a head. I could take the arms off if I had a really complex costume. Okay.
It's a little off center. Just rotate it that way. There we go.
All right. It's a little loose, but the important thing is it looks good in the shoulders. That's where it really reveals if it's not really good for a puppet, is they'll have, because puppets really don't have shoulders so much. I mean, this one has a little bit of a shoulder, but people have bigger shoulders than puppets, I guess is what I'm saying.
Or at least these puppets.
Little sweatshirt. Same sweatshirt's going back on. This is a 3T. If you're buying off the shelf, usually we've discovered that 3T is usually a pretty good fit for puppets. One of these days, what we should do is we just make a puppet body that just we know will fit 3T.
Yeah, why have we done that before?
I don't know. Well, because toddlers don't have arms that are this long. That's the thing. Puppets have strange proportions. But yeah, this one, if I were to, well, it's a hoodie, so I'm okay with it. Let's see how it reveals in the shoulder.
A little short.
Yeah, a little short for these arms, but it'll work. If I were to make a sweatshirt from scratch, we would want the arms to be a little longer, but I think for this purpose it'll work just fine. All right, I'm just kind of forming the hands so they look attractive.
Monty says, once you can create that 3T body, save the pattern.
Yeah.
And then sell that.
Yeah.
Oh,
Really.
that's a good thought.
All right, so here's the body here. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to attach the head. And the head just goes, the next sleeve goes in to the hole. You just pull it through. Kind of set the height that you want. And it depends on how big or small you want the puppet to be. How big or small you want the neck to be is really just up to you. And then I'm going to use a safety pin. So we have the center seam here on the neck sleeve. And then if you remember to the last video, we put that boning running up and down the spine. So I want to make sure the pin goes through the foam, through the sleeve, and around the boning, and then out again, so that it's a nice secure hold. Unlikely that it's going to tear all of that out. Let's see, I'm just kind of making sure I'm not... Where's the boning? There's the boning there. Okay, going around the boning. Like so. I'm going to try it out, check for height and everything. Yeah, that feels good. Okay, so now...
Oh, we want to add some gray to the soul patch.
He has glasses.
You want to do the gray in the soul patch first?
Sure, come on over. So here he is. Here's how he's looking so far. You can see, I think we're definitely getting away with having a different material for the hands. You know. All right, Patrick's going to do the glasses and the soul patch. And then we'll do arm rods.
So we wanted to add a little more gray to this material here. We could use new material, but I like the way this material looks. So we're just going to use a little bit of chalk pastel. These are which is a great way to lighten and change material. I'm just going to take a little of this white and just apply it to the soul patch here and see if that will give me the effect. Just kind of brush it on a little. to take down some of the darker points. That feels like that's pretty good. And the glasses are always a pain. Glasses are a pain on puppets. But everyone wants them for some reason. All right, I feel like that'll be good. We'll see if there's any notes on that. And then, so pastel is a really great technique for adding a little bit of detail to your puppets. You can also do a little airbrush, but I feel like at this point we don't want to pull the airbrush out. And then at this point, we're going to do the glasses. Different ways to attach puppet glasses. These had a little tape on there, which sort of has a little yucky, sticky stuff on here. We can probably wash that off. Actually, it's coming off pretty well.
It was top stick.
Top stick. No lenses, obviously. You don't need lenses. They're just going to cause problems. Puppets don't see anyway, so what do you need lenses for? Different ways to do this. Oh, the ears are one ear's a little low.
Classic.
We'll adjust it later. All right. Or maybe it's just part of his character. See if I can pull it up. So what we're going to do is different ways to do this. The basic way is to take a little whip stitch just around. The other way to do it is to drill a hole into the arm of the lenses and then stitch through that hole. That feels like I don't want to do that. So
Whip stitch.
Just a little whip stitch around. We'll do it. Clear, black, or upholstery.
Maybe a little top stick on the, since those are so big, the on the sides. No.
Yeah, maybe. This ear has to change anyway, so I'm not going to adjust the ear now, but we'll be adjusting it. So I'm going to stitch the glasses. I'm just going to do a little stitch around right here, just with some black upholstery thread, and we'll start with that, and then we'll see how it goes. There's other anchor points you could do. You could anchor here if you needed, or
Oh, you're back.
so. I'm just going to thread the needle like I did before.
Oh, you're back.
So, I'm just going to thread the needle like I did before. If you saw some little glitches, it's because my friends are calling me, and they're called potential spam. My potential spam friends are calling me. We could do a useful tutorial and try to figure out how to stop those calls.
Yeah, really.
If anyone knows, put in the chat.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm just going to little whip around the arm there, and then we might find other ways to kind of keep the glasses in place. But I think for now, this will be enough to at least get us to the stage where we get our arm rods on and get the puppet up and moving around. So that. All right, so now I'm just going to whip around here. Sometimes you can use a curved needle if you have a hard time. I know some people make good use of these curved needles. I find them very hard to use, but some people have a real facile at using them, and that's good for sewing in situations that you can't really. There's a flat surface you can't really get access to. But I think I have a pretty good access point here. So I'm going to go up, around, and around the arm, and just going to keep going around a couple of times once I loop this through. Once I loop this through, there we go. And I'm just going to stitch around. We might add some tape at some point, but this is what we're doing for right now. To anchor it in place. I feel like the best hold is going to be a little hole drilled out of this, but for now, we're going to do the anchor and see if that works. If anyone has any thoughts about a better way to attach glasses, put it in the thread there, because hey, I'm open to new ideas, because this is, I don't know, it's such a pain. Tie it off, do one more loop around. again. Just in case, I'll do one more round. Make sure it doesn't fall off. Tie off there. And on the other side, same story. Just gonna whip it around the arm of the glasses. Glasses looking pretty straight here.
Yeah.
Yep, great. Now we know where the ear needs to go. Don't worry, we won't make you all suffer through that part. We'll do that off camera.
I did it on purpose just to make Patrick redo it.
Yeah, ears are the worst. If you have a worst part of the puppet building process that you hate, let us know. What's the worst part for you?
Hands are also the worst.
Hands, fingers, all that stuff. So I'm just stitching this on, so I know you can't see it, but I'm just whipping it around the arm of the glasses. Tie a knot off, tie a knot off. And then next we're going to move on to putting the arm rods in place. When we make arm rods, we make out of copper welding rod with wooden dowels. The arm rods we're using now were made for us. We purchased them from Furry Fingers. They're out in England, and they make and ship arm rods to our specifications. And I love not making arm rods, but we do have some videos and tutorials about how we do make arm rods if you want to learn how to make them. Basically, copper welding rod, wooden dowel, and either gaff tape or some insulation tubing to be used for wires. All right, so now we have that in place, and the last step to bring this puppet over the finish line is going to be the arm rods, which Sean is going to do right now. We'll show you how those go into place.
Grab those pins.
Oh yeah.
All right, so here are the arm rods. All of our puppets have rod pockets built into the hands, and you'll see how that comes into play, because the rod pocket is right here, and all I need to do is take this flag, and the flag faces towards the fingers, so that when you move the hand it goes like this. Take this flag, and I just push it right into that rod pocket, nice and easy. Then what I can do is grab one of these precision point pins.
Here, show the brand.
Super steel, micro ground. But what I love about these is they are like sturdy.
They're
like
monstrous
nails.
size.
And I'm just going to just kind of use this pin to close up that little rod pocket, and then try to make sure the pin is buried into the hand so it doesn't poke out. You can see that's really rather sturdy, not going to go anywhere, and still easy to remove if you need to. So again, rod pocket just goes, see, right in and out, right in. And then we're going to take one of these heavy duty pins. I've seen some people do crosses with the pins and all sorts of nonsense. You could do whatever you want, but as long as that hole is closed and the pin is like buried into the puppet hand, then you should be in fine shape. What you don't want is to poke someone with a pin in your hand or your puppet's hand. There you are, like that. All right. So the moment you've all been waiting for. By the way, if you enjoyed this tutorial, we're accepting tips. So if you want to drop $5 into the tip jar, feel free to do that. Obviously, we don't do this for tips, but ever since we discovered that was a possibility, it made us thirsty for tips. So we won't be able to shout out the tips because Patrick's going to be down here puppeteering. But let us, ladies and gentlemen, it's Cameron.
I feel so much better now.
Now, you were a little concerned about this entire process.
I didn't believe in the process. I doubted you. I doubted everybody. But now I feel like brand new.
I feel like brand new. Cameron, how about this?
Yeah.
I'm going to see if anyone has questions for you.
Whoa.
All right, I'm going to see.
Wow. Questions for me? What could I possibly? I'm brand new. I was just born.
All right, so here's the Cameron puppet. If anyone wants to say hi, you can just say hi to him. Wave. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. If not, Cameron, you want to give our closing?
Well, I want to thank you all for joining us. Please like and subscribe to Swazzle Puppet Studio, and we'll see you all next time at the Swazzle Puppet Studio. Goodbye, everybody.
All right, wave.
See you later, and I'll see you all on Instagram.
All right, keep waving.
I'm waving goodbye.
I push the X.
Goodbye.